and thank you for allowing me to come and present a view from across the North Sea, coming from sunny Stavanger. You may not believe, but we had a beautiful weekend in Stavanger. First, I'd like to make the opportunity to inform you that we last week issued a lesson learned and follow-up report to Deepwater Horizon. We've in OLF working with the industry and also in concert with the unions and with the regulator, we've assessed what we could learn from the reports that have come out so far from the States. The conclusions is that the Norwegian continental shelf has a legislative system that is robust, and we do operate safely. There is no indication in what we have read from the reports from the States that we need to change the legislation per se, so the law is sound. However, there are, as with every accident and every incident, there is something to be learned. And the Macondo incident has clearly demonstrated there are many opportunities for improvement also to how we operate in Norway. And we have put forward 45 concrete recommendations. And in the way, as opposed to what we see from the proposal from Brussels, is that we see this to be implemented at the lower level of our system. So mainly within our standards and in our best practices and in our guidelines. The report can be downloaded from our webpage. Go to the English part of it and you will see it on the first page. With respect to operations and technical recommendations, we see the main body of implementations will be in our NORSOK standards, that is the Norwegian standards, and in this area, particularly the ones that relate to drilling facilities and well integrity in drilling and well operations. We started this work last year, and we expect to have a revision of these two standards before the summer. With respect to management recommendations, there are quite a number of areas, particularly with respect to the softer elements of how we operate. We see that there is a need to improve some of our management systems, well management system. We also have to look into process safety. There is also quite some opportunities for improvements in rig site teamwork. There have been indications that it could be some very good learning from the aviation industry on how to build good teams. This is also being proposed to be implemented. With respect to expertise, we are working closely with OGP and expect to be discussing crew resource management in the relevant committees there. With respect to mobile offshore drilling units, which has also been a discussion with respect to the UK situation on what has been proposed from Brussels, we see that all the proposals brought forward from the Gulf, they're already implemented in current legislation. The Norwegian industry is part of the joint industry project, Subsea Well Response Project, and we are also looking into the other opportunities that there are in this area. We support this initiative, and we hope to have one of those systems installed and available in Norway in not too distant future. One of the key learnings from Macondo was that there is a need for a unified command in case of huge incidents. So a way of coordinating both what the industry does and the tools the industry has, but also to work with what the government, what the military facilities, and other resources that you can pull on. And we are working closely with the Norwegian Coastal Administration to make a case for implementing such a system. This is not a system where we are running away from our responsibilities as operators, but it's a way to strengthen when you have a major accident. On oil spill response, the Norwegian Clean Seas Association for operating companies is well prepared to handle oil spills, but also there are opportunities for improvements. Chemical exposure, it was reported from a number of vessels operating there that the crew had issues with the atmosphere they were breathing in, and there is definitely a need to get better protection equipment, equip vessels with a proper way of protecting the staff. On the environmental impact, we've seen that the studies done post-Macondo is that the spill and the effect on the environment was smaller than predicted. Our Minister of Environment, Mr. Solheim, sort of described a chance for a situation that you wouldn't recover from. But so far we can see that the natural degradation of the oil is much faster than expected. In a Norwegian context, we've got some interesting learnings in that the prior paradigm we were in was that we wanted to collect oil with the mechanical tools, but we saw the use of dispersant had quite a positive effect in having a quicker degradation of the oil, and we see that now becoming a part of the toolkit that we will be using. On the 31st of January was a bit of a watershed in the contact between the industry and the Commission. Until that date, we've seen a very little involvement of the industry, that is both the companies, the associations, but also with the unions. So at this meeting, this was the first time really that we met, and John Taylor of Unite had a very good presentation there, which I believe surprised the Commission a little bit, because I think they thought that the British Union would of course be supporting something that went against the Oil and Gas UK's interests, but this time no. They somehow, also the Brits as the Norwegians have seen that we have common interests, and when moving things too far from control, then things go wrong. Unfortunately, we've seen at this meeting, Bellona, the Norwegian NGO, had a rather prominent position and probably had more representatives present in the room than representatives from the industry. Prior to this meeting, we had a fairly unique agreement between industry and unions in Norway. We have a forum where we meet, a collaboration environment, and in that, all the unions but one and the whole industry met, and we were able to draw up a common position paper where the main conclusions were that the regulation will lead to reduced safety level offshore in Norway. We also pointed out that the tripartite collaboration between industry, so companies, unions, and the regulator was void in the proposal. And we believe that this process is key to keeping the industry vital and the safety at a good level. We also saw in the proposal that there's unclear distribution of responsibilities. There is a very clear in Norwegian legislation that the responsibility rests with the operator. Now we can see a sort of salami transfer of responsibilities to the authorities. And we also see the big concern being the delegated authority that the Commission grants itself through the authority to adopt changes to the annexes. The democratic shortfall rests in that there's no doubt that the union has its democratic processes through the Commission, the Council of Ministers, and the Parliament, But that is not taking into account the relation between the industry, the unions. They have no role in this development of new legislation. And one of the key points is that the Commission impact assessment is flawed. I'll come back to that. And also we stated that it is unrealistic that they should be able to reduce by a switch the risk offshore in Europe by 50%. It's totally undocumented. A bit of a surprise to the Commission. Apparently, the Norwegian government took a position that they didn't want really to negotiate articles and wanted to discuss this more on a principle level. And on the 8th of May, the Foreign Minister, in addressing the Norwegian Parliament on EU matters, or EEA matters, stated that, as Charlie Henry stated this morning, that it's outside the EEA treaty, as it's outside the geographical scope, and it has a very limited and marginal effect on the internal market. However, as also stated, there are some exceptions with respect to preventing pollution. So in this sense, the Norwegian position so far, then, particularly relating to the proposal as it now stands from the Commission, is not relevant to the EEA treaty and will not be incorporated in Norwegian law. After the meeting in January, we were invited together with Oil and Gas UK and their contractor GL Noble Denton and DNV on our behalf to discuss the impact assessment. I think very clear that the early response from these meetings, as quoted by the Commission, was that we had only minor differences and that, well, we sort of had, there wasn't that much to discuss and we could live with those differences. But I think on the contrary, we have a fundamental problem with impact assessment, and that is demonstrated also by what we put into the discussions in Brussels. The Norske Veritas was of the opinion that the cost of the measures are higher than the benefits, even much greater. DNV is also of the opinion that the approach is not according with the accepted principles for risk assessment. And JRC is the Joint Research Council or Center of the Commission, and the resources that the Commission draws on to get expert advice. Their approach is a worst-case analysis, not a risk analysis. The Commission pointed out they didn't have access to the same data as the industry. Some of this was sort of proprietary data that they couldn't afford to buy access to. But DNV commented that the problem was not the difference in the source of data, but rather that the JRC was using the data wrongly. So, in a sense, what DNV put forward was that the impact assessment was not an objective proposition, and as it also included a subjective evaluation of public and government pressure. And OLF at this meeting also questioned whether the approach was in alignment with the Commission's guideline for conducting impact assessment. So, the test question I pose to you is, what is it that the EU regulation will improve? Rather than the question we get from Brussels, which says, what is it in the proposal that you don't like? The essence is there is very little in what they propose that will bring us forward. We question very dearly the competence of the Commission on this issue. It is, when you discuss with competent people who are used to having competence and are used to being confident, when they don't know that they don't know, you have a tough game. It's really difficult to get through. And it has really been a struggle to interact with the Commission on that area. One of the key elements with respect to decisions in EU are the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality. These are tools that are meant to check whether the proposed legislation has a value to the union that is larger than the cost, or whether regulation or local law is better suited to solve issues. And we believe that in this case it's clearly demonstrated that the large majority of EU member states and EEA member states, they have no oil and gas prospectivity, and as such we see that we meet a forum that is to a large extent having a majority of consumers and consumer nations rather than representing states that have interest and intimacy with producing oil and gas. With respect to going forward, we commend the initiative from the Commission, that is from the Director General of Employment, that has started a review of the Extractive Industries Directive 92/91 that is mentioned earlier today. We believe that the approach that this director has taken is a far more useful one than what we've seen from DG Energy. Clearly stated also is that there are some opportunities to work the Environmental Liability Directive. And an issue that we have brought up in discussion with Brussels relates to the use of what's called soft law instruments. This is tools that have been designed in Brussels when the union was expanded to help those countries that didn't have the highest standards of legislations, to bring them up to appropriate levels. And in a sense, we meet this contradiction in arguments when talking to representatives of the Commission. They say, well, you have a best standard, you have gold standard in the North Sea, and we do, for you this will be no change. We do this to help the people in the Mediterranean and in the Black Sea. And somehow, when they talk to when talking about what is to be implemented in the Mediterranean, they don't take height for that the issues there is not so much about the EU states, but in fact a larger concern with some of the states that will not become members of the EU on the short term. The discoveries of late have been in Israel and Egypt, and I don't think they will be member states very soon. And one of the last things that Syria did before the civil war broke out was to sign the Barcelona Declaration. The Barcelona Declaration is similar to OSPAR. It regulates the issues around the Mediterranean. And that's probably a much better and more relevant forum for bringing up the standards than to bring this to Brussels. Just like we have seen that we've had good involvement through the OSPAR. And this has been mentioned earlier, that the proposal will force member states to remove sections of the current legislation. And for us in Norway, this means that we need to do major adaptations to the Norwegian Petroleum Act and to our HMS Act. What the Commission tend to ignore is that all things are connected. All things with respect to going down from guidelines, best practices, and standards, all these have hooks into the legislative framework that's on top. And with having EU regulation in this area, we'll need that all those hooks need to be rewritten. A major task to be taken care of. So, Steve Walker suggested that we should be subtle in our approach towards the Commission and the EU, and I probably concur with that. But as you may know, to be subtle subtle and being Norwegian is a contradiction of terms. So I don't know how we're going to succeed in that. And I think it's also stated that we won the arguments, but somehow they don't listen. And I think that's also some of the challenges with this. You need to stay on the high ground. What we need to is to discuss the principles on the high level and not fall into the trap of discussing whether the words in the article should be in singular or plural. So with that, thank you.